So I'm using cold pressed watercolour paper and I put some washi tape around the border. And it is 7 by 11 inches approximately. But you may want to make it smaller, especially if you're going to use it for a Christmas card idea. So I've squeezed out some of my favourite colours, a little bit of gold, I've got some Moonglow, Lunar Blue and Hematite Genuine. These are all Daniel Smith colours, but you can use other brands. I'm using Daniel Smith's Raw Sienna here, so you don't have to use all these specialised colours. Just use some yummy dark colours that are your favourites. So this is Moonglow. I love Moonglow because it creates the most amazing colour effects. This is the Lunar Blue, which is kind of a really sort of dark grey blue. So I'm using my size 8 brush just to mix up some puddles of colour. And this is going to be for the first stage. So I'm just wetting the paper randomly. You don't have to worry about any drawing here. This is all from my imagination. So a large brush and I'm soaking the paper, taking my time just with clean water. I'm starting off with the lighter colours. That's a little bit of the dilute gold, which got a lovely shimmer, and the raw sienna as well, all wet in wet and all random. This is some of the Moonglow and I'm just drizzling this in wet into wet using my size 10 round brush. So I'm really encouraging you to have fun with this. So I'm just going to do some tilting now to allow the colours to blend. And you can see that Moonglow, how it creates those beautiful sort of granulation, but also the lovely way it disperses, creating that sort of pinky colour, more of a violet grey colour. And I'm tilting to allow it to kind of flow into the gold and raw sienna. So going in with the Lunar Blue now and just making a little puddle. It's quite a watery mix and I'm just painting that wet into wet. So what these colours are going to be, they're going to be for my underpainting. They're actually going to be the colour of the tree trunks. And once dry, I'm going to mask them with framing tape. And I'm just spattering some of the gold now, again, sort of keeping these sort of random marks and just having a play as well. It's so inspiring to do this. And I'm just tilting to allow all the colours to blend and mix on the paper to create some interesting colour effects, and just mopping up any puddles there as you saw. And I'm just going to sprinkle table salt onto the wet or damp surface there, and that should absorb the paint to create light textures. And I'm also going to apply cling film. This is actually recycled and I've washed it, and I'm just applying it to the wet surface and sort of manipulating it and pulling it so it makes horizontal sort of marks, and that's going to be for the markings on the trees. And once nearly dry, I'm just peeling off, and you can see it's actually set. And once it's set like that and it doesn't move, you can give it a blow dry with your hairdryer or allow it to dry naturally. And you can recycle again your cling film by giving it a wash and drying it naturally. So I'm going to allow my painting to dry naturally to allow the salt to work, and it's worked really well, and as you can see, so has the cling film, to make those really interesting textures for the trees. So I'm going to start applying the framing tape. It's very similar to masking tape, it's just a little bit kinder and it doesn't seem to tear the paper as much, but I would test this out on the paper you're using. So as you saw there, I tore the tape and I'm putting the sort of straight edge at the bottom and the torn edge at the top there, and this is for my foreground, so I'm protecting the foreground there. And I've just torn some thin strips, very variable sizes, and I'm sort of placing them on the dried paper. Don't worry if they look a bit sort of skew with. This is a little bit of fun just to create the look of birch trees in winter. And once you've got down the tree trunks, you can put in some small branches at the sort of top of the trees there as well. It just makes it more interesting as well. And I'm using masking fluid with a brush where I've dipped the brush hairs into liquid, hand liquid soap to protect the brush while I'm using the masking fluid. And I'm either masking out stars or sort of snowflakes here, you decide, but I'm painting this with the masking fluid wet on dry, and allow this to dry naturally before I start painting. If you apply any heat to masking fluid, it can be very tricky to remove it afterwards. If you don't like masking fluid or you don't have any, don't worry. I will show you an alternative to masking fluid later in this tutorial. So I'm mixing up the same dark colours I used for the underpainting, but they are thicker this time, which makes them a lot darker. So that's the Moonglow, the Lunar Blue and the Hematite Genuine. Remember, you can mix up your own favourite dark colours, Phthalo blue with alizarin crimson, Paynes grey with a little bit of red, you name it. But I'm painting it all wet on dry using a large brush. And I'm trying to vary the colours as well. So really sort of fill those spaces with all those delicious darks. And I'm sort of dropping the colours on top, wet into wet as well. And I'm just mixed a little bit of green with the Lunar Blue there to kind of create the look of bushes in the background there. And I'm sprinkling some salt just on top there to create some soft, light textures. I'm also tilting upside down to allow some of that paint to run to create sort of a misty sort of effect as well. And I'm going to allow the painting to dry naturally to allow the salt to work. So I'm going to remove the framing tape now carefully. Now, if you notice, the paint has bled underneath the tape. This usually happens because the paper wasn't quite dry. So if this has happened to you, don't worry. You can create some sort of nice textures with that. I always think of these things as happy accidents. So here's a close-up and you can see all the lovely markings on the tree trunks from the underpainting. And I'm just brushing off all of the salt there. So I'm just using a small round brush, using some of the darks that I had previously and just creating some markings on the trees to kind of create the look of silver birch trees, but also to try to sort of disguise some of those dark marks where the paint had bled underneath the tape. I'm removing the masking fluid with the framing tape, the sticky side up, just so it pulls off the masking fluid nicely and cleanly. As you can see, I've got a nice look of sort of snowflakes. So I'm just adding some branches using white gouache. You can use white watercolor or white acrylic or even acrylic inks. Whatever works for you, as long as it looks quite opaque. And I'm using a reservoir brush. You can use a rigger or a twig to paint these thin sort of branches and twigs here, all wet on dry to bring the painting to life. You can also use some of this white paint to disguise some of the paint that leaked under the tape. And you can also paint the sort of snowflakes as well, which I mentioned earlier is a good alternative to masking fluid. So I'm just applying a few more sort of thinner branches wet on dry. And if you notice, I've turned my painting upside down because I do find it easier sometimes to paint little branches upside down. And of course, it wouldn't be a Karen Rice tutorial without a little bit of spattering. So I'm using my size 8 brush and I've watered down the white gouache a little bit to make it easier to spatter. So I've got lots more sort of snowflakes in the background, in the distance and in the foreground as well. So I'm removing the washi tape to reveal a lovely white border, and you can leave your painting now and not turn it into a Christmas card. I'm quite pleased with this, and I feel quite inspired to do a few more of these, and maybe the next time I'll make sure my painting is thoroughly dry before I apply any of that tape. If you want to turn the original painting into a Christmas card, I've got a really super easy idea for you. Spritz the painting with water all over, and then use Brusho's Sprinklet and just sprinkle it with a sort of dry brush. So dip the dry brush into the Brusho's Sprinklet and then tap it to allow it to fall onto the surface and it will just fix itself on there, and you've got this beautiful shimmering sort of background, and you can then actually glue your painting onto a blank greeting card to create your handmade original Christmas card. If you don't have time to make lots of handmade Christmas cards, you can print off your painting from your printer and you can glue it to a blank card. And I'm going to show you an alternative to Brusho Sprinkler as well. So you'll need some PVA glue, and I've watered it down a little bit, and this is a print of my painting, and I'm just applying the glue with a synthetic brush, and I'm just going to use some glitter now, and I'm just going to use a dry brush, dip it into the glitter, and I'm going to tap the brush to allow the glitter to fall onto the wet glue to allow it to stick. And look at that, it's got the most amazing shimmer. So just let that dry and then get a ready-made blank card. This is A5. I'm going to stick the print onto the card. So I'm using the glue and I'm gluing the back of the print there, and I'm going to place it, sort of center it on the card, and I'm going to sort of press it down with some paper towel there to make sure it's sort of stuck firmly. And I'm just going to use some stickers here. They're decorative stickers. So I'm just going to put Merry Christmas on here, and I'm just going to make sure this is centered. It didn't look quite right. So they do come off quite well, these stickers, and I did purchase them from Amazon. And I'm also going to use some stars here just to put one in my painting or in my print of my painting, but also on the card as well to finish off this sort of Christmas card with a print of my painting. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you like the content that I create here on YouTube, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? You will get access to my exclusive tutorials and downloadable outline sketches, and you can cancel anytime. Details about the membership can be found in the description below. Just click Patreon. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Happy painting. Bye for now.